Hi, I'm Clinton Jones, Michigan State University College Hall of Fame in football and track and field, and also National College Football Hall of Fame. We were national champions in 1965 and 1966. You're watching Duffy Doherty's Milestone Minutes with Tom Shanahan. Go Green!
This is Spartan Stadium in East Lansing, Michigan. And a capacity crowd of some 76,000 will move into the stadium in the next couple of minutes, most of them already here, as you can see, for they are coming today to watch one of the classics in collegiate football, the Fighting Irish of Notre Dame and the Spartans of Michigan State.
Hi, this is Tom Shanahan. Welcome to Duffy Doherty's Milestone Minutes. What a great honor we have today. College Football Hall of Famer Clinton Jones from Michigan State and the great Rocky Bleier from Notre Dame and winner of 4 Super Bowl rings with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Clint, welcome. Well, a few comments here.
Well, Rocky and I had something in common, and that's the number 4. But his victories and ours weren't.
That's
So we had
that's
four.
right.
I like to say 8 comes out to 0, at least for us.
Unfortunately, that's
But
right.
The
And
honor,
Rock,
yeah,
go ahead, Clint. And Rocky, we're honored to have you on. Welcome.
Well, thank you very much, and it's a pleasure being with you, and more importantly, with Clint, who I haven't seen in years. But anyway, it's great to get together, Clint, and talk about our past and our history, and the games that we've played. And so I'm looking forward to as we move forward.
Okay. Well, Rocky Bleier, of course, is mostly known for his 4 Super Bowl rings with the Pittsburgh Steelers and having served in Vietnam and been wounded and came all the way back. He wrote a book, Fighting Back, and that was made into a TV movie. But Rocky also played for Notre Dame in the 1966 game of the century. And this was a transformative moment in college football. The 60th anniversary is upcoming this year on September 19th. Michigan State will play at Notre Dame. And the significance of this game, it ended in a 10-10 tie, which kind of led to its legs all these years. But a lot of people, older people need to be reminded, and younger fans don't understand. This game drew an overflow crowd of 80,011 to Spartan Stadium, a record TV audience of 33 million in a population of 195 million. Compare that to the 2025 Indiana-Miami game, which TV executives were giddy to have 30 million out of 340 million population. So the country was transfixed by this game. It was the first live broadcast to Hawaii. Michigan State had 3 Hawaiians because of the new satellite technology, and then also to Vietnam. In fact, when I wrote a story about this in my newspaper career on the 25th anniversary at the San Diego Union-Tribune, I got a letter, pre-email of course, from a guy who said he was listening to the game while on a submarine off the Vietnam coast.
So,
We're in this part 2 of the series. Part 1 was George Gedeke of Notre Dame and Pat Gallinaw of Michigan State. We're going to focus more on Vietnam, on 1966 with a different time with Vietnam. Rocky was one of 2 Notre Dame players who served, and Michigan State had 4 players. And Clint went on a USO tour of Vietnam in 1971. And the NFL was the first pro league to sponsor such a tour. So if for our audience, who the younger audience may not know this, Rocky was wounded in Vietnam. A grenade went off, wounded his leg and foot, and had to have multiple surgeries. But NFL Pittsburgh Steelers owner Art Rooney kept Rocky on the injured reserve and told him just get healthy. And then, of course, we know his career from there. Uh, Rocky, kind of bring us up to date on your journey from Notre Dame to the NFL and your Super Bowl fame.
Well, thank you for that introduction, be a part of it. But yeah, so you have to go back into the 60s, as Clint and I were at that moment in time. The Vietnam War was escalating through the middle part of that 60s. In 1968, it was the height of the war. We had most fighting personnel, over 500,000 troops over in Vietnam at that moment in time. And the draft was prevalent. Now, it was not necessarily a popular war, as history has shown itself, and as we have lived through that period of time, and a lot of protests about our soldiers being over there, Americans being over there. So it wasn't looked upon as we view it today of serving our country. As a matter of fact, people had a disdain for those soldiers who had served. When you came back, you weren't greeted with open arms at all. You were a baby killer, and at times looked down upon. The young soldier who was returning was told, to get out of your uniform as you best possibly can, as quick as you can, and try not to interact with the American people, because this is the kind of reaction it's going to be. So that's what we kind of lived through at that moment in time. But one of the interesting thing is the evolution of Clint and I being here, making choices within your lives and how it affects one's life thereafter. Going to the University of Notre Dame, coming out of high school in Appleton, Wisconsin, and you go, how did you end up there? Well, unlike today, there was some scouting that was taking place. I got letters from universities and state colleges in the state of Wisconsin to come and play for that school. Probably the best piece of advice I received was from a patron of my father's bar one day. And he said, listen, you're going to get a lot of scholarship offers. And by the time you visit 5, 6, 7, 8 different schools, they're going to roll out the red carpet. How do you make a decision of where you want to go? Choose a school. Choose a school that you would like to graduate from. Not necessarily play football at, graduate, because anything can happen during your playing career. You can get hurt, so on and so on, but at least you get an education at a good school. And I thought, well, that made perfect sense to me. And so I said, okay, if I'm the University of Wisconsin, it was one of the picks because I was from that state. Notre Dame, of course, was another one. And then we had another friend that had stopped at my father's bar who was from Boston and went to Boston. He said, I can get you an interview over at Boston College with the coach over there. And so those were the three I chose. And then, as I tell people, I did what every good Catholic boy was taught to do. That was to go to church, pray for guidance and direction. And then, like every good Catholic boy, I did what my mother wanted me to do. And that's how I ended up at Notre Dame. But it's interesting, you talk about those decisions. So I go to Notre Dame. Clint, I wanted to ask him this question, which was that he grows up in Ohio, but ends up in Michigan State. So how did you make that decision? And ultimately, the decisions that you make of where you go, and the team that you're with, and you go, how did this happen? And it comes to this game. It comes to this one point with the personnel that they have, the players that they have on both sides, to game of the century that has lived on all these many years. So it wasn't as if we had decided to change things at the university, since you're just a part of that group. And it turns out to be two wonderful teams of talented people that made a mark, that they've been talking about even after all these many years later. So the sport gave us that opportunity. A decision got us to that school. Those groups of people came together with a coaching staff, that was dominant within our lives, to allow us to get to that point where, unlike today, there was no playoffs, there was no national title games. It was all came down to the first time in a long time that two number one ranked teams got to play one another at the end of the season for that mythical national championship. And so that's what blew that game up.
Yeah, and then now tell us a little bit about going to Vietnam, getting wounded, and
I'm
the heart
sorry.
ruining
I
role.
got okay. So I get drafted. Into the NFL by the Pittsburgh Steelers my senior year, after my senior year in 1968. Highly touted draft choice. Unlike some other people that we're talking to today, I was the 400. I was the 417th person picked in the draft that year. I was the 16th round draft choice. Now you have to understand, to our listeners, there were 17 rounds at that time. At least I was not the last guy picked. So I came to Pittsburgh, and I made the team as a rookie. Playing special teams as we did at that time. But then, like everybody else, when you make that transition, coming out of college, you got a student deferment. You all of a sudden become eligible for the draft for that conflict that we just talked about that's going on in Vietnam. And I remember the I remember the happiest day of my life at that moment in time was when I got my draft notification, okay, or my 1A classification from student deferment. I took it to the Steelers. I was in training camp. They said, "Oh, don't worry, we'll take care of this for you," whatever that meant. So, and time went on, and all of a sudden, a couple months, and I asked him what happened. Well, things, the congressman got defeated, the general retired, all their excuses about being able to pull any strings, and bam, I was drafted. And fell through the cracks, whatever it might be. And that was in December, and and went to the service and got drafted and went into the Army. Basic training, advanced training. As I had said, it was the highest deployment of people going over to Vietnam at that time. And ultimately got my orders. I was in the Army, and like thousands of other young men, ended up in Vietnam, up in I Corps with the AmeriCal Division. And so so we were in country, and so at that moment in time in country, what was taking place, which I didn't find out till later, which was that there was a big movement with the Marine Corps that was north of us. We were, as I said, up in I Corps, and they were pushing the Vietnamese down towards us, and we were retaining force, and not really knowing what was taking place, except for that we were on patrol, that the enemy were in the area, and all of a sudden we ran into, quote, an ambush. Firefight took place, and in that firefight, I got wounded twice. One shot through the left thigh, and then later on hit with a grenade that blew up to my right foot and right knee and right thigh. And then we were in a firefight, and we finally got out of there sister platoon fought its way in, dragged us out, got to a security area. Helicopters came in, took us to an aid station, took us to Da Nang. And then ultimately, I spent 3 weeks in Tokyo, had several operations before I came back to the States, and ultimately was on injured reserve, so to speak, until I got out of the service.
Yeah, and if it wasn't for Art Rooney, maybe you don't have a football career,
Well,
right?
that's right. No, so I'm sitting in the I'm in Tokyo. I'm in Tokyo. I'm in the bed in Tokyo, and the mail comes in, and I get this note from Art Rooney, and basically it said on the note that we need you, and things aren't going well. We need you, come on back and have a job. Speak, so, but it was just a nice note at that moment in time. And so they allowed me to come back. I went through, I went through training camp that year when I got out of the service, in 1970. And so I went to training camp, and training camp took its toll. They gave me the whole. I stayed all of training camp. By that time I was limping, things were sore, and so on. And Chuck Noll, head coach at that time, was then, I met with him, and he said, we're going to release you, go home, do what's necessary, and come back next year. We'll invite you to come back next year. Oh, I was devastated, obviously, when you get that final cut, you're not going to make it. I got a call from Dan Rooney, Mr. Rooney's son, who Dan was then running the operation, and he said, I'm sorry I wasn't there. He said, I talked to Chuck. We're going to have our doctors take a look at you. We put you on injured reserve. I had another operation, and they bought me a year. And so I had the year, went through that, came back the following year. And then I made the taxi squad, or the developmental squad, as they may call it today. So they really bought me 2 years to heal, get stronger, and so on. And so I came back in 1972, a little bit bigger, and a little bit stronger. And by that time, and I was lifting weights, and I was coming back. I was working on my strength and my speed, and I made the team. And I made the team in '72. Never carried the ball. Played special teams, but that's okay, better than the year before. '73 came back, made the team again. In each and one of those cases, I was the leading ground gainer during the exhibition season. Now, it may not sound like much, but we had 6 games in the exhibition season, so it gave you a chance to, to prove and show what you could do during the regular season. So they kept me, and I got to carry the ball once during that season. And then also at that moment in time, as you struggle through our whatever decisions that we make and where we're going to go, the question is, to me, was that I don't know if I have a future here. I mean, I made the team. I came back. I was playing special teams, and after the '73 season, I left the team, and I basically quit, not to come back. I had 5 years. I had my 5 years, my minimum for my retirement in the NFL. And so I thought my life's going someplace else. I mean, I did come back and made the team, all that kind of stuff. And I was living in Chicago. And I got a call from a teammate of mine who was coming into Chicago in the off season. He said, let's get together. And I declined. He pushed, I declined some more, and he pushed, and then he said, why? I said, well, I quit. I'm not going back. And he said, you can't quit. He said, if you quit, what you have already done is you've already made a decision for the coaching staff. Do you like them well enough to make decisions for them? He said, no, your responsibility, if this is what you want to do, is you come back and you make them make a decision. You back them in the corner. You give them every reason to either keep you or release you, but you don't cut yourself. I mean, the reality of this game is that we all can be cut at any time. The reality of this game is that we can be released. So if this is what you want to do, then you don't cut yourself. And it was maybe the arm twisting I needed, from an older brother I didn't have. But, and I went back. And everything I perceived did take place. And I was a leading ground gainer again during the exhibition season. And I tell you that only because of the fact that the only reason I was the leading ground gainer wasn't because of the fact I was bigger, better, faster than all the other running backs. It was the simple fact that I played more than anybody else during that period of time. I carried the ball more than anybody else during that period of time. Given what? Those two simple statistics, I better be the leading ground gainer during that period of time because all they were providing for me was what? An opportunity to be able to make this team, and they had to keep me. And I was the fifth running back out of four at the beginning of the season, back playing special teams once again. When unbeknownst to us, Franco Harris, our starting fullback, gets hurt. The backup becomes the starter. I become the backup to the backup. Wow. I'd never been there before. So with renewed vigor, that first game, second game, third game, fourth game, the backup gets hurt, and I'm inserted in the game. Along with my running mate, a guy by the name of Preston Pearson. He finished his career at the Dallas Cowboys. And I only tell you this only because of the fact that he scores, gives us a lead. We go on half times, and I'm thinking, who's going to start the second half? Maybe I get a chance to play the second half. We did, and we won the game. And the following week thereafter, we got a chance to play. Everybody was still banged up, and we won that game. And then the week thereafter was a Monday night game, an extra day of dealing. Franco now becomes healthy. Dang it, but that's okay. At least I got a chance to play, show, prove what we could do. And we had a pregame meal. And after the pregame meal, breakout groups, all the running backs get together, and the coach says, Franco, you and Rock will start tonight. And I was quite confused. And the only reason I got a chance to get a play wasn't because of my size, speed, or my ability to carry the football, things I did not possess, but ultimately one talent. Because Chuck Noll came up to our backfield coach and said, we have a weakness in the backfield. Who's your best blocker? And he said, liar. He said, then start him. One talent. And all of a sudden, that fine line of one connected my life. They pulled us together. And we got a chance to played the remaining part of the season, went to the playoffs, and went to the Super Bowl for the first time and played 6 more years thereafter and, got a chance to play in those 4 Super Bowls. And in 1976, Franco and I became the second set of running backs in the history of the NFL at that time to be able to gain 1,000 yards rushing each in the same year. And then after 12 years, I retired. So that's kind of my my way into the game and what had taken place during that period of time.
Yeah, and as the audience can see, that's why it's such an amazing story. Clint, you were part of that USO tour with Larry Zonka and some other NFL guys. I'm sure the soldiers were more interested in seeing Ann Margaret with Bob Hope, but tell us about that experience.
Well, I went over in 1971, February, for the whole month. But actually, see, I was in ROTC at Michigan State. I need to give you a little background. And after the game of the century, a week later, I got a notice to go to Detroit and get my physical. 2 weeks after that, I had to go to Cleveland and sit before the draft board. And there was a guy in the draft board was determined that I was going to go to Vietnam. As a matter of fact, I still have all my draft cards, all of them. I went home to Cleveland, and this guy chewed me out like I did something wrong. He said, you're going to go and join my son in Vietnam. You football players are getting out of the draft. Well, that wasn't really true. But anyway, somehow something happened, and I wasn't bothered anymore. And I think maybe because I was my mother's only child. So anyway, I didn't have any reservations about going into the service. And I talked to my commanding officer, said, I don't mind going into the Army, but, it seems like I want to be drafted in the NFL, and I would like to be drafted. And they felt the same way. They wanted to see me be drafted because they knew my history and the team and everything. They're right there in East Lansing. But anyway, years passed by, and later I was asked to go to Vietnam, and I was happy to. And And that was a turning point in my life because we don't sing and dance. We are life to life communication with the guys in the service. So during the day for 8 hours, like a job, we'd hang out with the guys. And it was a personal life to life communication. And then in the evening, whoever you made a bond with, you would hang out with at night. Well, they gave us a rating. Everything, it has a certain rating. So our rating was that of a lieutenant colonel. So we ate with all the generals and got all the good treatment and stuff like that. And so uh, it was I went with Larry Zonka, Greg Landry, uh, quarterback for Detroit, Joe Schiavelli, guard for the Rams, and John Morris from New England. And it was an eye opener, and it just it showed me that first of all, I won't go into the politics of it, but it was like it really changed my life, you know, and even to this day. And and I happened to see two guys from my hometown. One went to East Tech, another one went to Glenville High School over in Vietnam, 10,000 miles away from home. And there was an opportunity for me to really put my life into the lives of those um, young servicemen, because these guys were young, and it, it just got a lot of experiences, but it really showed me the fortune that I had, not only to be able to be in the NFL, but to go back and show my appreciation to these guys who were risking their lives and gave their lives. And during that time period, I saw over 100,000 troops. And when we came in at Tan Son Nhut Air Base and Saigon now, Ho Chi Minh City, Da Nang, Dak Pho, Phu Bai. We traveled all over. As a matter of fact, I got an opportunity, Rocky, for about 2 minutes to fly a helicopter.
That's great.
Rocking and rolling. and but this got the opportunity,
Yeah, that's right.
yeah. But it was it was a tragic war that really had a tremendous effect on on America. Actually, we're still paying for that. But it was just a tremendous experience, and that I'll never forget that. That's it. I'm as proud of doing that as I am playing in the NFL in that Michigan State.
Yeah, and then Clint, of course, was the second pick of the 1967 draft by the Minnesota Vikings. Uh, as we record this, we're a couple days removed from Memorial Day, so I want to mention the Notre Dame and Michigan State guys who served in Vietnam. From Michigan State, there was Eric Marshall, Mike Pruitt, Jimmy Hoy, and John Kettner. Pruitt, Hoy, and Kettner have all passed away. They survived Vietnam, but they've all passed away since then. And of
And
course,
Mick Pruitt.
Rocky and a
Yeah.
Notre Dame safety, Mike Bergner. I can't think of anybody better 2 days removed from Memorial Day to talk about all the sacrifices of 50,000 Americans who died in Vietnam with a Memorial Day tribute. And Rocky, if you could say a few words.
When you look back at that experience and the lives that it touched, Vietnam specifically, as all wars that we really celebrate those who had served our country and pay tribute to those who had made that commitment and those who had lost their lives over there. It was it's something you don't think about it, although it's in the back of your mind. And especially the experience that we had in going to Vietnam, we knew that there was action taking place, and the body counts that were happening, we didn't get them as much in previous wars, although there was, but it was constant now in the news, the body count that was taking place over in Vietnam. So it was there, and so the people here, the families here that were at home, wondering and worrying about their their children and or their relatives that were in that war and what was actually happening. So it was the first war, in all honesty, that was fought in the living room. I mean, you could sit there and watch it take place, and so you were. So civilians back here or families were intimate in taking place. It wasn't weeks later that you'd get a letter or news about what was taking place. It was almost instant, and so that had a that had a big impact on not only the soldiers over there because they understood it, but also the families that had to live through that, and so. Yeah, and so what had taken place was just that, and the incidences that had happened, and then you got to know other people that were going through the same things. So
Okay, and then Eric Marshall was a backup quarterback on those Michigan State teams, backup
He
to
was
Timmy
our
Ray.
Rudy. He was equivalent, Rocky, to your Rudy at
right,
Notre
yeah,
Dame. Eric
yeah,
Marshall, and actually his name is uh, Eric Reuben Marshall. No,
Yeah.
actually Rubenstein, but he was black, born about one mile from Ole Miss.
Yeah, let me give a little background on Eric, and then I want you to comment, Clint. Eric, Michigan State has two black quarterbacks on their roster under Duffy Doherty. At a time, there were no black quarterbacks in college football, and Eric Marshall, similar to Rocky's story, kind of didn't pay attention to his draft paperwork, graduated, got drafted, and he said, "Well, if I'm going to Vietnam, I'm going as an officer." So he went to OCS school. And the thing that stuck with Eric, he told me, and I write about this in my book, The Right Thing to Do, with a chapter on Eric's life, is when he was a Ole Miss. He lived in Oxford when the Ole Miss 1962 riot erupted because white supremacists wanted to prevent James Meredith from enrolling as the first black student. And the army trucks rumbled down his family's home, his mother's home street. And he saw how quickly they took charge. And he says that always stuck with him, the efficiency. So he went into the army, ended up serving in leading up as a lieutenant, leading a platoon in Vietnam. They were the ones that you saw going into those tunnels, digging uh, that the Vietnamese had all over Vietnam. They went down in those tunnels to clear them out, and then Eric decided, you know what, I get treated better in the army than I do in American society as a black man. I'm going to stay in, and he retired as a lieutenant colonel, and then went on to, was a teacher and principal in San Francisco. Clint, tell us about your good friend Eric Marshall.
He was remarkable. This was a guy that, even though he was in the scouting team his whole career in college, outstanding athlete, but his attitude was just selfless. Really a team player, and we had so many guys like that that made a difference and actually made us become what we you know managed to accomplish. And he just like no matter what he was selfless, just really selfless, and always had a smile on his face. Never complained about anything. And his dream was to go to Michigan State because he grew up in the South, like down the street from Ole Miss. But when he would tell his classmates, he said, "One day I'm going to Michigan State." They said that'll never happen. Well, got in touch with Michigan State because his father lived in Grand Rapids. And so when he used to go see his father, he developed a relationship to Michigan State. So for him to be drafted became a dream come true. And then to be, you know, have the accolades of being on a championship team is just like, he never forgot that, he just like, so the last game when we played against Notre Dame, we told Duffy, you have to put Ruben in. And so just like Ruben went, he played, because we had that great appreciation for him because football is a team sport and it's like life. You study, you do everything you have to do. But see, when a team wins, everybody wins, and that's the kind of unity that we had at that time, and actually Notre Dame had the same thing. So me going to a Catholic school, so when during that game, the brothers came up from Cathedral Latin. So whenever I do anything good, they would jump up and yell. When Notre Dame would do good, they jump up and yell.
Over Neil. That's it.
So the people in the stand looked at them. They didn't know. They thought they were priests. They says, "Well, Reverend, what team who are you rooting for?" It said Notre Dame and Clinton Jones, of course. Yeah, so like that was.
That's
Yeah,
great.
Okay, yeah, and
yeah, that was like that was and it was a tribute to both the universities and the athletes that it ended in a tie. If it not ended in a tie, nobody would remember that game.
That's right. You're right. You're right. That's
You
it.
know, well, that's the greatest
yeah,
honor that could be given. It ended in a tie, and that was like really well. It was showing Japan and Hawaii closed the state down so they could see it live. Plus, usually it take them a week in order to see the game. It's shown
Right.
in England, Japan, Vietnam, Germany, you know, and so that showed that was a paradigm shift in the NCAA football.
Right.
yeah,
We were part of that history.
and just to add a little bit to the story Clint told, Eric was in sixth grade, and his dad had told him about the black players at Michigan State, All Americans like Leroy Bolden in the 1954 and 1956 Rose Bowls. And Michigan State began to gain a reputation as a place of opportunity for black athletes because other schools had a quota limiting black athletes to a half dozen or so. And so in sixth grade, Eric gave a speech that he was going to go to Michigan State and play quarterback and graduate. And this is how bad segregation was in the early 60s. His classmates laughed at him. They said it was the impossible dream. No black kid could go to college like that at Michigan State. But Eric made it all happen. I want to move on to the game itself. We focused on this really untold story about Vietnam and overshadowing the game of the century. But let's talk about the game itself. Rocky, talk about running the ball against college football Hall of Famer Bubba Smith, 6'7", 280. And then George Webster, the greatest Spartan of ever. And you had told me this before that George ended up sending you to the hospital with a lacerated liver.
That's it. It was a. I mean, it was a tough physical game. Only as we prepared for that game, as we were watching films of Michigan State and trying to get an understanding of how they played, and it was really awesome to be a part of that, and it was a team that was dominant, obviously, was physical, was big. One of the things I just want to revert back just for a moment of time when we talk about those kids that or us that had served in Vietnam coming out of college, at that moment in time. What people have to understand was that there was a limitation of who could be drafted, and so most of size and weight, height and size and weight. And so if you were like 6'4" and 240 pounds, you were ineligible to be drafted. And so the majority of football players, and you say, well, how come there's only, four guys or, and two from Notre Dame and, went to Vietnam? Well, that was because everybody else but anyway, so I just wanted to put that in there from a size.
Yeah.
And talking about size, yeah, and so if you looked at those films as we watched the films to prepare for the game, just the domination of their defense. Now, at that time, I mean, offensive guys got all the publicity and so on, but it was really the defenses that established how good you were and how far you're going to go to be able to stop that opponent. And we both had great defenses coming into that game, but they had dominant people, as you watched as a running back going up against that defensive line, you go, oh my God, they don't let anybody get through, and so anyway, but that was now a couple things that happened in that game. It's just that, as we got prepared for that game, injuries. It was the end of the season. Injuries had happened, but the players weren't either 100%. Some couldn't play in that game, and so that that made a difference in how you approach. The interesting thing is this, Tom. I think that was the only game. That was the only game in my entire life. Well, maybe not in fifth grade, but anyway, that I was the leading ground gainer with an astounding, I think, 53 yards. I think I was 53 yards in that game, which really says something. Not that it, but it just says something about the defense that we had to play against, and and what took place. Anyway, so it was. It's one of those games where you talk about and you want to say, listen, look it up. Get to the highlights. You go and make your own decision on this game. It was that kind of a physical game at that time, and the people that had been injured, and replacements, and people that rose to the occasion to be able to play that spot. Was just really, it was exciting to see, and to have it, as Clint had said, to end in a tie was the only way it should have ended, and how important that was.
One of my
Talk about
proudest moments in that game, two things. One was when I blocked for Reggie Cavender and went over for the touchdown. The other one, when Jim Lynch intercepted the pass and I hit him and dislodged the football from him and recovered it. Those are two things for me as a player, as a running back, because back in those days it was like with the tank division, the
That's right.
compounders. That's
It
what it was
was.
about. So for me, to be a blocker and then play defense, that
That's
was
it.
I
And
was
you
proud
say
of that
that's
for
right.
me personally.
I can remember that. I can remember that. I pictured that play right. I mean, with Jimmy Lynch getting the ball to intercept, and then all of a sudden, boom, he gets hit and he fumbles and he's up going, man.
Yeah,
What?
and Jim Lynch, of course, was as a college football Hall of Famer, linebacker, won the Maxwell Award, the other Heisman Trophy, and on that interception, Clint hit him so hard, and there were pictures of this that he
That's
did
right.
a somersault, head over end, and that's why he fumbled. um, I also, one of the other things I want to talk about this game, there were 7 first-round draft picks, 33 NFL players, and remember, only sophomores, juniors, and seniors were eligible for the game. But this past year in 2025, Terry Hanratty, Notre Dame quarterback, went into the College Football Hall of Fame, and I did a little research on this. He's the ninth one from the game of the century. And that's far more than the other so-called games of the century. For example, the 1971 Oklahoma Nebraska game only has 5. And those 9 are the 4 Michigan State players: George Webster, Bubba Smith, Gene Washington, Clinton Jones, and Coach Duffy Doherty. Notre Dame's are Alan Page, Jim Lynch, Hanratty, and Notre Dame coach Ara Parsegian. If both of you guys could talk a little bit about your experience, your teammates, and particularly your coach, what your coach meant to you. Rocky, go first.
Okay. The interesting thing with Ara Parsegian and his coaching ability, and his assistant coaches, was that he It was all about we can talk about it. It was all about the team. It was all about, getting the most out of out of the individuals. So you got young kids that are, that are coming in, 18 years old, 19 years old, and you're trying to mold them into a team. Some have reached their peak before, some during, some are growing and becoming better ball players. And so Era was not necessarily a yeller or a screamer as we've had in coaches, and he wasn't a glad hander and so on. But he was very focused on his people. And very interested in his people. And if anything was at times needed to be discussed between himself and a player, it wasn't a public showing, it would be off to a side. And whatever that conversation was, he was never in a position to want to embarrass, his players. But yet, he had he had a focus on what he could accomplish and get the right players to be able to do that. So now the biggest thing is staff. That was from a leadership. We had a running back. We had a running back coach, and so you had a position coach, and those position coaches are taken care of and get trained. Their people, and it was basic fundamentals. The things that I learned at Notre Dame were a foundation to go on in into the NFL. Techniques that you used that they weren't going to teach you. This may, I don't want to bore anybody, but as simple as left and right-handed stances. Okay, so everybody left of the football was in a right-handed stance. Everybody right of the football was in a left-handed stance. Now, if you ask people to get down to a stance today, and from those who play, everybody gets down into a right-handed stance, unless you happen to be left-handed, which is a small percentage, but everybody is in a right-handed stance. Era took that to the point where everything that you did was a reason. So when you're running a sprint to one way or the other, is that it was a crossover. Your first step was a crossover step, plant step. And by that time, the quarterback was synced to take a step back, turn, and the ball would be right there, so that you were in a position to have an open chest to get the ball. Anyway, not have it. So all these little things became important in blocking and how you functioned, to the extent that it made me a better ball player when I got to play in the pros, because they never did it. So it was those fundamentals for us, or for me, that was, I think, so very important into the foundation and into the success of what that team had accomplished and where they were. And so that was a year of we talk about that year of players coming in that are coming of age. I was a junior, and that one, the seniors, and those were Era's players that he had recruited and built that team on. So it was all those little. I can remember this though, when we were introduced onto that field prior to that game. That was the largest crowd I've ever seen in my life. When we were introduced, or Michigan State was introduced, there was a roar that moved the air. I could see it actually move. That's how many people were there, and that's what you go like. Oh my goodness gracious! You've never played in front of that many people who were that loud and into the game. So it was. We not only had a crowd that you had to fight against, but then you had all those guys that Michigan State that you didn't like to begin with that you had to fight against. So anyway, so that was it.
Okay, Clint, tell us about your time in Duffy.
Well, Duffy was, when when I went to Michigan State and I met Duffy and Rocky, the person that recruited me um, was John McVay, who went on to be general manager for Super Bowls in San Francisco,
Mm-hmm.
and Hank Buller. So they came to the school to see Rich Samodi and Terry Mulligan. Terry Mulligan was the offensive and defensive end, and Rich Samodi was offensive and defensive tackle. They didn't come there to see me because in high school, I only scored 2 touchdowns, and that was against John Marshall. But that happened to be the film that they're looking at, so they said, "Well, who's that guy?" So Coach Google told them, but they really, and so they put it in the back of their mind. But anyway, I wanted to go to the Catholic school. I wanted to go to Villanova, actually, Rocky,
Uh-huh.
but my SAT scores were not good enough. So I eventually I wanted to go. Anybody that wanted me, I wanted them. But the person that came after me was Bob Devaney at Nebraska. And I don't
Mm-hmm.
remember our senior year, you came out in 63, right? Did you come out of high school in
High
19?
school in 64. I'm a year
You were Jimmy Ray. Well,
yeah.
63 was the first year they had the national letter of intent. So Bob Devaney saw Cathedral Latin play against Holy Name in 1961 in Cleveland Brown Stadium, where the East Side played against West Side. So he remembered me. So my senior year, my accolades actually were in track and field. And I set the national high school hurdle record in the high hurdles and ran in a horseshoe at Ohio State. So my coach Marabito had all Italian coaches. Coach Marabito and Coach Ruvolo had been trying to tell Woody Hayes about me, but he wasn't interested. So when he pointed me out at the track meet, I was just kind of warming up around the track. Woody thought I was a shot putter. And then after the race, he come and congratulate me, hugging me, telling me how I was destined to go to Ohio State and this and that, blah, blah, blah. And being a good Catholic boy, I didn't lie. So he said, I said, well, I can't come here because I signed with Nebraska. He said, what? He said, what do you mean you signed with Nebraska? And I said, yes, sir, I signed with Nebraska. And so, but I wound up spilling the beans. I was supposed to keep it quiet. So it made the contract null and void because I signed it early. So I was out of that contract. So to make a long story short, I wound up going to the University of Detroit. So they wanted me to come there, and they had a guy named Hayes Jones, who's an international hurdler. I thought he went to the University of Detroit, but actually he went to Eastern Michigan. He talked to me. I said, well, I want to go to the University of Detroit. So Coach Marabito said, you know what? I don't trust those Jesuits. He said, well, you just do old coach a favor and go up to Michigan State and talk to my friends, Hank Buller and John McVay. So I went there, Rocky. I saw the campus because I made a vow at 13. When I get 18, I was going to leave Ohio, the whole state of Ohio. I didn't like Ohio. I wanted out.
All right.
Go to college, go in the Merchant Marines, or go in the Army. So anyway, I saw that campus, and so I just fell in love with it. And that's how I wound up going up to
That's good.
And what happened was the University of Detroit never got a track club, and they wound up dropping football.
Was that when they dropped it?
Yeah.
Oh,
So I would have, my football career would have been ended had I
yeah.
gone.
If
And
you,
I saw Duffy at nighttime. If I saw him the next day, I wouldn't know what he looked like. But I said, Coach, if you just give me the opportunity. And that he did. And so our freshman year, we had so many players from the South, the first time actually playing in an integrated situation, but they're so talented, and we were whipping up on the varsity, and that's what Sherman Lewis was a senior our freshman year, because as freshmen we didn't play, but I think we scrimmaged against Notre Dame freshmen in
oh,
1963.
in 63. Oh, okay.
Yeah, we
Okay.
scrimmaged against you, And so, but our practices were so hard that when we played in games, it was a break. I mean, we were just a very physical team, and we just had a lot of talent. And then that following year, your senior year, 64, they brought in Jimmy Ray and a bunch of another group of guys, Bob and Pisa, and we just gelled and we came. But the main thing we had was unity, from the president to the athletic director to the coaches. The community were unified, and when social unrest was going on all over the campus at Michigan State, we were unified. We were one family, different in body, but one in mind, and that's what made the difference. And I really felt in my heart I would give my life for my brothers. That's how I felt, and they felt the same way. That's what we felt about each other. So when we went into to the games, it was a battle. It was us against everybody else, and I know that's how. You felt in Notre Dame. Oh, as a sidebar, your teammate Alan Pace, his father owned the bar also. Did you know that?
I didn't know. I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, he owned the bar, and Alan never drank. He never drank.
Never tried it.
And he wanted to go to Michigan State, but his mother wanted him to go to the Catholic school and said, "No, you're going to Notre Dame."
That's it. Well, we're glad she made the right decision.
Oh yes. So yeah, so that was like, I mean, there's such history and there's so many lessons to be learned in that. And the thing about it, it was like integrity, a lot of
Yeah.
integrity and character
Right.
Yeah.
building in that.
Couple of Yeah, a couple of things I want to add to Clint's story. I have a chapter on Clint in Ray of Light. He was a little bit modest there. What he didn't say was he got injured early in his senior year, and that's why he didn't play much football his senior year. But when he won that track state title with national marks, and then later when he committed to Michigan State, Clint's high school coach told me this. Woody Hayes called him up and was still trying to get him to come to Ohio State. And Clint told him, "No, I'm going to Michigan State." And Woody Hayes cusses out a teenage kid over the phone.
Oh,
Yeah, and that was Woody Hayes. But I want to move on here. Final questions. Uh, Again, we're recording this the day that Michigan State President Kevin Guskowitz has left for Clemson. Kevin had come here a couple years ago and done so much to modernize Michigan State's athletic department and bring it up to speed in this age where fundraising is so important. I want to go back to the '60s with these teams. At the time that you guys played, Notre Dame had great stability with Father Theodore Hesburgh was the president. Moose Krause was the AD. Era was the coach. And then at Michigan State, you had John Hanna, the president, good friends with Notre Dame's administration. And we also had the strong athletic department and football coach down to Duffy Doherty. Biggie Munn, I drew a blank there. Biggie Munn was the athletic director, and then Duffy Doherty, of course, the head coach. I want both of you guys to comment on how important stability at the top. And let me interject here. I failed to mention this. One of the reasons Kevin Guskowitz is leaving is because he had so much trouble with the board of trustees undermining his plans. That's one of the reasons he left. He expressed that in a letter to the alumni. So I want to reemphasize the importance of president, AD, football coach, all on the same page, what it means to a university. Rocky, you go first.
As you look back on that, that not that we had an opinion at that moment in time. You went to a school, or I go to Notre Dame, and for whatever reasons, people decide to go to that school or to their schools, but you go. And continuity wasn't important. Well, I should say this, it is important, but you're a freshman, you're coming in, but as I look back on that experience and what has taken place in today's society and the changes that are taking place, is that there was a continuity of expectation from a player. I'm going to school. I get a scholarship to go to play football here. We got a great coach, okay, and you take advantage of what's there. So now you're there over a 4-year period. Now that coach is there for 4, 8, 12 years later on, and you look at what they've succeeded to do. Continuity becomes important in recruiting, in establishing a mark of the kind of character that you are as a coach, but more importantly, the program that you have, the evolution of the players coming out. Did they get a chance to play, continue? What kind of people are they within their community? All plays an important role in that frame of mind, that you're not at a school where coaches come and go, come and go, come and go, or a society that has people come and go because they're not reaching or getting their expectations. So I feel very fortunate to have been there at a period of time where the basis, you understood. Father Hesburgh was head of the school, and as Era was head of the coaching program, and Era had been, it had been there for years thereafter, but as had Father Hesburgh. But continuity in structure and what gets accomplished becomes so very important, at least during that period of time, as you see it today, and why people are leaving or changing, because there isn't, even in leadership roles, with board of directors and or with school boards, of what are you trying to get accomplished here, and where are your parameters, what kind of a student do you want, and how do you want that school to be seen, becomes so very important, and we've shifted from that, unfortunately. And so if you look at those schools, even in today's marketplace, that have stability, it's because they have people there that have been stable. They have people there that have been there in the continuity of a belief of what you're trying to get accomplished, of where the school is going to go, and thus the athletic programs along with it. So at that moment in time, I was very fortunate to look back as an alumnus, to go back and take a look at that school and say, yeah, it's got continuity, and the direction has been pretty much the same within that period of time.
You bring up a very important point about the continuity. And, like I said earlier, you can be different in body, but have one mind.
Right.
And someplace after 1967, we started being infiltrated with people that didn't really have the student or the university as a priority. Universities are supposed to be civilizing institutions, especially for our youth. And so when you have bankers and other people that don't have really a foundation in the human side of what the university is supposed to represent, you start getting something else. You start getting people that are more interested in their own selfish concerns and political concerns. And so that's what's been happening. And unfortunately, we just lost Kevin Guskowitz, who I met personally through Tom in November 1923. And he was up as a candidate for Michigan State. And I said, we really don't deserve him. We'd be lucky to get him. And he came there with the toxicity and the disunity, and people that never put on a uniform, ever even played the game, and making decisions that affect, the students, the respective programs. And consequently, he saw, he wasn't supported, and he left. And I can't say that I blame him. Uh, we still can turn poison into medicine. Winter always turns into spring. I believe that. But right now, and for a long time, Michigan State has not had that quality of character since our team in 1965, 66. That's a long time ago,
Oh, yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And so like I don't know, it was kind of like we've been in the wilderness since that time. Then people, presidents come and go, and the ones that have made a contribution weren't appreciated. But I think that you know, we just need to overhaul it. But the example that we set during the time period that we were there in the mid '60s, eternally was a spirit to have at a university. It's
Mhm.
a university. Not only Michigan State, but also Notre Dame. Notre Dame has been able to carry on their legacy, but for some reason, here at Michigan State, they have not been able to evolve to a consciousness of one for all and all for one.
Okay. Thank you, Clint. Go ahead, Rocky.
Well, no, go, no.
Yeah, let me add a little bit to what Clint said. He mentioned I introduced him to Kevin Guskowitz. That's giving me a little too much credit. What happened was Guskowitz had founded a program that studies concussions and things like that, and there was a working agreement with the NFL. And he was the chancellor at North Carolina at the time. And uh, Clint was in town to visit his daughter and son-in-law who live in Durham. And I said, well, Clint, let's record a video at Kenan Stadium because here's a fact lost to history. The sports media avoided race in the 60s. In 1964, Clint's sophomore year, Michigan State was the first fully integrated team to play in the South at segregated Chapel Hill. And Clint, first touchdown of his career was a 42-yard run at Kenan Stadium. And to borrow from the words of Shirley Pulvich about Jim Brown and Washington, Clint integrated the end zone at Kenan Stadium. So I wanted to capture all this, and I was able to, through Calvin Guskowitz's assistant, Candace Gorger, we were able to get into Kenan Stadium and record a video that you can find on my website, tomshanahan.report. So that's a little story behind that. Um, let's wrap up. This was a long session because we had so much great ground to cover and such two great guests. Final comments on 60 years later and the game of the century. Rocky, you go first.
Eh, My final comments is that as I look back on that period of time and now being able to share it with Clint and yourself, Tom, is that I feel so fortunate, and we're talking about being at the right place, right time. I don't care with the right school, but being able to be fortunate enough to have that experience of just being able to be on a team that allowed you to get there and to play in a game that has since gone down in the annals as one of the all-time great one of the great games, only because of the fact that it ended in a tie. There was no playoff. It ended in a tie, and it'll be remembered. So to be able to have this discussion after all these years and hopefully put in perspective for those listeners ultimately to understand the nature of the game, understand the people that have played and how important that continuity is in being able to have these experiences, to be able to have this game to be able to fall back on and say, yes, there's only one game, quote, of the century, and I got a chance to play in it. So that is how important it is.
Great. Clint.
This, you see this here?
Yeah, we can see
Yeah.
it.
You recognize those guys? You were on the team then, Rocky.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Jeez.
The only Viking I see is Oscar Reed in the background.
Right, that's it. Right.
Me and Joe is on my. It seems
See,
like the whole team is riding on my back.
there you got that whole defense. Only that's right.
Yes.
So
Well, it's because of our college experience. It's just pure fortune. We're so fortunate to have the careers that we've had, and then continue on in life. And most importantly, to be alive at this point and to tell the story.
that's it.
There's such
Uh,
a and I have such a admiration and respect for you and your legacy and all that you've accomplished and given to the country and to the nation. And I'm just honored to be in the same platform with you, Rocky.
well, same here, Clint. New friendship has been created, so I
Yes,
appreciate
it
it.
has. Yes,
Yes, it
it has.
has. Thank you.
Yeah, and thanks for watching. And to show you what a different time it is, nobody from the Indiana-Miami National Championship game is going to end up being sent to Iran or Cuba if we decide to
I
invade
don't think
Cuba.
so.
That's how
You're
much the
right.
different times are. So thanks for watching. Thanks for understanding how significant of a moment this 1966 game of the century was, both on and off the field. And share it with your friends. Thanks for watching.